So if you listened to us, you'd have made millions over the last sort of few months, but especially in the last few weeks. Many people have talked on the things we've talked about though as well, like oil, SpaceX, five individual stocks. But most people on YouTube talk about these things in the past tense and they get all the credit. And they say, oh, it was obvious, blah, 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 but not really actually talking about it before these things happen. So, I mean, diving straight in, obviously, we were talking about oil before all of this move, talked about the manipulation, it's collapsed, and then we were talking about getting straight in. And last week we were saying buy as much as possible before the end of the month, and that has come through to fruition very nicely. And I'll just share screen now.
It surged in the last week, and we should point out that we've been talking about oil since long before the recent
Yeah,
war.
yeah, exactly.
We started talking about oil, back when it was hovering around $50 or even lower. And my view has always been that it's going to take out the 2008 high around the 140 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I stand by that. And when it does take out that high, it's off to the races. It's going to be up by shooting for 200.
Yeah.
So there's still opportunity to get in here. But last week we clearly said that as soon as it gets up and takes out the sort of $75 mark, that you should definitely get in there. And particularly, it took out the gap that we mentioned as well at
Mm.
82, and it filled the gap.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean it's just been a straight line up since we made that video, and there's no reason to think it's going to fall back anytime soon. Although this market is subject to a lot of manipulation from the government because the
Mhm.
fuel prices are obviously a very important consumer item, and the U.S. Treasury have admitted that they use the financial markets, they use the futures market to manipulate the price of oil.
Mm.
And the clearest sign of that is oil, physical oil, particularly in the Gulf, is changing hands for $140 compared to
Yeah.
Brent this morning was over $100. WTI was 92, $93 this morning. It's fallen back a bit. WTI, as I'm looking at my screen just now, is just under 90.
Mm.
But this is a strong trend, a strong upward trend, irrespective of what happens in the Gulf. Oil is underpriced. Oil is going up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we touched on a few things we don't need to repeat this time because it's more of a summary video, but we touched on the reserves, we touched on manipulation, we touched on inflation, and that's the reason for, long-term oil being breaking out those all-time highs. This war has just created extra levels, and now the Houthis in the other Gulf are also causing chaos. So, and there's no reserves really this time, and China are now a buyer, and maybe before Trump was telling them not to buy. Whereas now they're now buying up oil, which is gonna, send this higher up as well. You can actually look at China's imports, and they literally around the same time as this curl up, going over the usual technicals, but you can see exactly where my buys are very transparently. We love our 200 period moving average, the 50 and the 9, which is the red line, blue line, green line. Was a bit premature, bought a little bit early, hit the red line, our other indicator, which I didn't wait for confirmation for, got a bit excited. Price carried on going through, but then when that red line broke, I then added some more, and we are now off to the races, which is great. If people are thinking, oh, I want to get in now, but I feel like I've missed it, you can still use that red line to catch the moves on the way up. So like even if you bought on the dip here onto the 9 moving average there, if price came back to about 85 or where that gap fill was, where you talked about last video, good level to add. And if it fell through, then you're looking at
And also once you get in, you use it as a stop. So have you
yeah.
stop just below the line?
Yeah, if you wanted to go in with high leverage and wanted to make some pretty big swing trades, I'd be getting in around there. I'd be watching the 15-minute 200 because that's actually where the price kind of gets in line with, because that 9 period moving average on the daily is kind of the 15-minute 200 anyway. And you can see this is where price bounces off of constantly, and we're actually there at the moment. So there is a little bit of a disconnect between the two lines at the moment, but I'd be looking, okay, probably on this instance, a buy actually probably around here because we're at the 200. And then I'd be looking at maybe one of these dailies here that the close below that day there, $85 a round number with the 9 mid period on the daily. So somewhere around, if it got to 84, then maybe you'd close out and then re-enter if you had a couple of green days, just to avoid a scenario where you're catching a falling knife and short-term price manipulation. But another one I think we should definitely quickly go over is absolutely SpaceX.
Well, SpaceX has played out almost exactly as we said in our SpaceX video. We
Yeah.
said that it was going to surge at the open. We made our video just before the public launch of SpaceX on the public markets, and everybody was very excited about it. We said, look, this is going to go up
Mm.
on its first day of trading. Then it's going to fall back, and if you want to get into SpaceX, your best option is to wait for a few months and then buy. We also went over why we think it's vastly overvalued, and even with the fall in the price, it's still vastly overvalued given it's a loss-making company, irrespective of
Yeah.
how exciting the technology is. It's we've got to look at the reality of this a heavily loss-making company. But SpaceX went public. On its first day of trading, it hit $225, launched at $135. If you wanted to buy in the market in the first day, you had to pay upwards of $150. And anyone who's bought on the first day of trading or at the IPO is losing money now because yesterday closed at $118, and the IPO price was 135. So
Exactly.
everybody in this stock is losing money right now, and anyone that made money out of it were the people who followed our advice and shorted it on the first day. You could have shorted it at 220 and made a fortune.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's what's really interesting also, I don't know if we can see here, but you could see $300 was the kind of price I had on the upside, and then 40, which is what we were actually saying in the video in the thumbnail, 40, 50, 60 was where it was really heading.
Yes.
All the hype suggesting it was going to go crazy was a pump off the the IPO, which is exactly what happened. And it would have been very funny if it somehow got to 300, but that would have been a bit of a tall
Well,
ask.
what's interesting about the stock is there are about 360 million SpaceX shares, which is 56% of the float, is the short interest.
Um,
So I wonder if what's happening there's a lot of stock locked in by insiders who got stock as well employees of the company or previous investors and so on, and they're not allowed to sell yet. So I wonder if a lot of them have actually shorted the stock to lock in the high price, which would be quite a sensible thing to
yeah,
do, and that's why there's such a high short interest. But that stock is still going to come onto the market at some stage.
really good
So
point.
this is a heavily shorted stock, but there's only a very small percentage of the float is available to the market just now because of the insider lockups. But they
Mm.
start to be released later in the year, and that means that there's a lot of overhang of the stock that could come onto the market. So it'll obviously fluctuate day to day. It may rise a bit from here, but there's still a lot of potential downside in the stock given that it is fundamentally overvalued.
Yeah, I think we made some strong points on obviously the fact that it's not making any money. There isn't even a PE ratio. It's got loads of mess and debt. And yeah, the financials are just terrible. You can see the value is 4 out of 100. And yeah, losing money. There's not even a PE ratio to go off of. They've got debt. The book value per share is $3.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
that's
we talk about overhang of the shares. Another overhang is if they have to raise more money, which they likely will have
yeah.
to do in a year or two.
Yeah.
Then they have to issue more stock to get cash.
Yeah, exactly. If they're in what 6 billion, 6.5 billion worth of debt, something. I mean, they have 23 billion in cash, but they're still actually got a debt pile there, which is
But how long is it? That's a lot of money, obviously. But if you're burning through 15, 20 billion a year,
yeah.
it doesn't last very long.
Exactly, yeah. You just got to look at the losses here. But no, obviously we respect Elon. He could pull off some crazy acquisitions of businesses that actually are doing money and actually do add a accretive value. So you never know what
But
might
yeah,
happen.
you got to look at every business on its own merits, and
Yeah.
this at the moment doesn't look great on the
Mm.
fundamentals.
Absolutely something that we said definitely do not get into. And in fact, we actually was so concerned about retail just not listening and following the crowd that I did a full-on Reddit post trying to warn people a month or so ago before anyone was making comments on the SpaceX situation, just how terrible the company is, the book value per share, the loss, as we just said, specifically no guarantee of profitability. the dilution, the voting powers on the shares. It's just the biggest mess ever. It's like a legal scam of retail investors is basically the best way to describe it. And we were absolutely spot on. I mean, what else did we cover here? I mean, we covered EasyJet, we covered eBay and GameStop, but more so from a point of strategy. I mean, let's quickly look at EasyJet. I mean, that was a really nice chart actually, hugging the 9 period moving average, as we said before, bouncing, 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 really big moves off of I mean, that specific title of the video was stocks at 5, but the offers at 650 and the price got all the way up to there. So really, really interesting. And then also, as we said, with the 9 moving average, price gets down to it, and then you wait for a sort of a swing low to go below the previous day's low in line with that 9 moving average. I mean, you can see actually right here, we had a couple of lows in line with the 9 moving average here, and then we had a big dump as soon as we got below that 9 moving average. So very interesting how price moves with the things we say on the technical side, but also the fundamental. It's
It
interesting.
may be there's another bid for EasyJet. A second bid came in, competing with the first one, but I wonder if the dump has to do with the higher oil prices, which obviously fundamentally affect airlines.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's a really good point. All these prices, in terms of fuel in the future and flights going up, and it's going to be way worse in the future.
Yes.
I mean, I've spoken to people now who weren't watching our channel before when we done these oil videos from ages ago. Look how many we've done, so many. How oil will get to $300, in February, way before anything. And all these people now are saying, yeah, I can see, I'm pretty sure oil's going to break all-time highs, and that was before. Now everyone's agreeing with us, but yeah, I mean, it is going to happen. But
Well,
if you
back
want
when
to
we
be
first
extra
made these videos,
early,
I think that was one of the ones where people were calling us idiots for for calling for higher oil prices. But no, normally, there should be some kind of index for that. The more hostile people are to what we say, the more chance we're right.
yeah, I mean that links back to even other things like Bitcoin we've covered, which actually, we've almost slightly flipped on. If you look at it now,
Well, where did we said buy it around about 1559 thereabouts, after having said to short it right at the very top at 124,000.
yeah, we said to short
But
it on this day here, yeah.
Yeah, but our buy recommendation was pretty much a short-term trade, so you could have got a quick $4,000 or $5,000 out of that one.
Mm.
The chart's looking pretty weak at the moment. This leg up. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were saying about sentiment there, too positive, massive drop, what, 50% down. And then we were looking, and then I mean we went down almost fakes to go higher as things do to catch stop losses, and then came lower. When we talked about a double dip, we're kind of getting that here a little bit. Although if you do look at the previous time we got sort of down here, we had like a double dip here and then a slight fake, so it goes slightly lower and then it goes up. So there's a small chance that maybe we do have a fake there, but at the end of the day, the reason for the flip in our view is that 200 on the weekly time frame, which has been the ultimate technical signal for Bitcoin in
And the
history.
very negative sentiment that
Yeah.
goes around with Sailor strategy selling a load of Bitcoin and basically
Mm.
flipping their whole position, and it still went up in face of that. You had to look at that
Yeah.
as a positive move. So that was one of the reasons for as well as the technicals for the short term call,
Mm.
but. I think we're still longer term bearish, but short term may have a bounce.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, what's interesting about that is just, you get these Bitcoin lovers, people who live and die by it, and then therefore people follow that. That's a great sentiment tracker. When the absolute biggest bulls of something start to change their actions, that's when, maybe a bottom's in, because then they're capitulating. And when they're finally capitulating, that is when sentiment is going to be at their absolute lowest. But at the same time, we've never said that Bitcoin is going to return to maybe this bull cycle. I think sideways tracking is exactly what we said when it was in 24K, and I still stand by that. I think we could just these are sort of good levels to have some swing trades at. It's not we're not the same
Yeah,
believers in Bitcoin. I'm sure people
what
watching are, but
watch the charts and look for extreme sentiment, and that's the way to trade Bitcoin.
exactly, yeah. I mean, this is and in individual stocks we've been about 95% accurate as well. I mean, Fiverr it's come down to such an undervalued level now that we have, we did call it a buy a couple of weeks ago, and we had a nice sort of swing move up from that call. you know, about 20%. But still a good level around here. I think you can even have a stop losses behind this level. If you get a couple of green days here, I think it could easily explode back up. But
Well, it's one that's worth watching. It's one that look out for a takeover bid for something like Fiverr because it is so undervalued and on the fundamentals, and there must be people watching this stock and saying, well, this could be a decent vehicle to do something with.
yeah, they have 370 million market cap, and they have the same in cash as well. I mean, actually, it's 300, 270 here, but the latest filings show 360. So it's like you're buying the whole business for free, and that business is profitable. I'm very surprised that a company does like Upwork doesn't do something here because Upwork are trading at better, you know, PE ratios more than just five. And maybe the reason why Fiverr is falling is maybe because of the decline in maybe revenue and growth, but in terms of fundamentals, it's still extremely undervalued. Whereas here, Upwork's also extremely undervalued, but they've got definitely they've got the facility to be able to buy up a company like Fiverr. I mean, they could buy that whole company, 200 million in cash. They could pretty much buy that whole company in a heartbeat and
Yeah.
add that to their business. It'd make absolute sense. And this is actually quite a good stock too for people to look at. I had when I've done some Fiverr Reddit posts, people have been mentioning it quite aggressively here, and you can see almost from the chart, similar pattern, beaten down, beaten down, beaten down. So I mean, this is not one I'm full on touting. I'm just surprised they haven't. They're not a company that would be the ones making an offer on Fiverr. Just looking at anything else we covered. I mean, in this video here, did some really quite, you know, we mentioned once again more companies trading below their cash. Here are some of the picks. Quickly go over some of these. You know, Grow is another one that great undervalued opportunity, and once again another one of our 95% kind of win rate stocks. I mean, pretty much everything we covered as well. I mean, here we covered it in there, fell a little bit, and then constantly on these levels. You know, as we said, the 200 you could be buying there, swing trade up, nice 20%. Once again, back to the 200, 50%, back to the 200. I think we made a video around this time here, and then it moved 30% again. And then you look at the
Yeah.
fundamentals on the company, very nice. Nice ticker as well, actually. So, you know, very small company, 35 billion market cap, but they've got 35 million in cash. So once again, you're buying the whole business for free, and that business is now profitable, earning more than it's ever earned
We,
before.
we
And
like any business you can buy for free that's got earnings.
yeah, exactly. Because
And
then
it's
anything
surprising
big.
surprising that these opportunities even exist, but they do.
Yeah, exactly. Because then any acquisition, any rumor, it just sends the stock going crazy. It's and you're basically at the floor anyway if you know for a fact that the stock is trading. You know, the book value per share is 369, and you know, kind of get up to that level, and then it comes down again. But then it's trading at a discount to book value. So, and it's been trading this in that area for the longest period of time sideways. So that's another reassuring thing. And it looks like now we're starting to curl up, and then maybe they could get on a growth story if they really pull out the earnings and stuff. McShit we've covered before, that rose 300%. You know, Walker Cripps it was straight away taken over not too long after we made our videos on that. And then Mind Flare as a UK company, 200% rise, and then came down and then 100% rise. So